All right, what's going on, everybody? Good morning. We are back. Well, yesterday I talked to Bob Arum and we discussed his plans for moving ahead with boxing. Uh, Looks like it's going to be June 9th. That's the targeted date, and he seems pretty optimistic that he could be able to stage some fights starting June 9th. And he's got a couple weeks of fights planned ahead. PBC now, from what I hear, is coming back in July. And Eddie Hearn from across the pond also says he's coming back in July. But here's the interesting thing about Eddie Hearn. He's actually thinking and planning to stage fights at the Matchroom headquarters, which used to be his father's old home. And I believe that there's 15 acres of land that he has there. And it's quite interesting when you look at some of the photos here from the Boxing Scene article, because actually they posted an interview that I believe they conducted with him. I think it was they conducted it, or this could have been from another site that actually did the interview, and maybe they posted the quotes. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they have some quotes about him talking about his plans to stage these fights in July. And I guess the first fight out of the gate is going to be Dillian White versus Alexander Povetkin. So that's a great fight to start off, his schedule with. That's awesome. So it says that he's planning to have the fight staged at the Matchroom headquarters in Brentwood. And like I said, it's where his father's home used to be. And now they turned it into, I guess, the Matchroom headquarters. It's pretty impressive piece of land here. Looks beautiful. And they have like I said, a picture, like almost like a diagram of where the ring is going to be. And it's pretty cool how this whole thing is set up. So I'm sure he's going to have to float this by the British Border Control. I don't envision him having a problem pulling this off and getting this approved. And it says that 4 consecutive Saturdays in July and August, beginning with Terry Harper's WBC super featherweight title defense against Natasha Jones, and concluding with Dillian White's heavyweight fight against Alexander Povetkin. Okay, I stand corrected. So I guess the first fight is going to be Terry Harper versus Natasha Jones. And I guess the other fight that they're going to end off with is going to be Alexander Povetkin versus Dillian White. So that's going to be the final fight in the series of fights. I apologize for that. I misread that. So he's also saying that no public will be admitted to the shows and only about 90 people will be allowed on site, which makes sense because you don't want too many people on site. But that seems like a lot of people, but I'm sure he'll have to get that approved, and possibly he will, because July, I'm anticipating some of these restrictions will be lessened and lifted a little bit as we're trying to flatten the curve here due to the crisis that we're going through right now. And he's saying financially this will be painful for all of us, but after the momentum we have worked so hard to build over the past 10 years, I'm not going to let boxing just dribble back. Hearn told, so I guess this was from the Daily Mail, and Boxing Scene's just taking the quotes from the Daily Mail. Okay. Hearn told the Daily Mail. So he said, while other guys go with arenas and empty studios, ours will look very different. He said, just imagine it. It is summer. The house is all lit up. You can see the Canary Wharf in the distance and fireworks are going off. Then over the hill walk Dillian White and Alexander Povetkin for a massive tear-up on my lawn. World Championship Boxing in my garden. He said, oh, go on then. Okay. He said, so the series of shows has a working title of Matchroom Fight Camp. So it's going to be called Matchroom Fight Camp. Said there will be 4 or 5 fights on each show. The maximum laid out by the guidelines circulated by the British Border Control. So I guess they're only allowing 4 or 5 fights on the card. Saying Hearn did not want to just put shows on in a television studio. He said we cannot just bring boxing back with a dark studio. He said we have built our product on the razzmatazz, the sexiness, and the drama. It has all been about building that momentum for a fight. So we cannot afford to just bring people back out like a game show. He said we want to create a gladiatorial environment that will not only ensure compelling viewing, but will also ensure fighters can perform at the highest level. He said, it's a huge mission. We're going to turn our headquarters here into an outdoor venue for live boxing with the full canopy in the middle of the garden and the ring overlooking London. He said, we are building changing rooms for the fighters, set up space for a ring walk, and figuring out how we could do everything you need for this kind of production with as few people as possible. We're in talks with a nearby hotel about taking control of it for each of the weeks. The way it will work is everyone involved, the fighters, the teams, the broadcasters will go into the hotel on Tuesday, and the fighter and their team will go to a testing facility at the hotel. You'll go in, get tested, be handed a room key, and go straight to your room where you will wait until you get the result of the test. Anyone having a test will have to wait in their room a day before getting the all clear. So the tests are comprehensive, and they'll take 24 hours. So the fighter will stay in their room until they get a call from our doctors, likely on Wednesday, with the results, Hearn said. So if they're positive, they will leave the hotel immediately. If they're not, they're able to leave the room and take part in the obligations of fight week, all with social distancing. Everyone involved in the show from top to bottom will have to go through the process before they are allowed onto the premises. Said, in terms of the fight week promotion, that is the other side of the challenge. How do you do media around it? Obviously, we cannot have dozens of journalists turning up and sitting shoulder to shoulder for a presser and a weigh-in like normal, so we'll need to decide how it will go. It is likely that Zoom interviews and social media live streams with the fighters and journalists will be the new norm. And pumping out clips of the fighters around the clock, building up to the weigh-ins on the grounds on Fridays and the fights on Saturdays. Okay, so he's got an interesting plan ahead. The only problem I see here is weather. Obviously, it's going to be nice because it's summertime. But what if it rains heavy? Something like that could put a damper on things. At least if you have fights scheduled inside, that would take care of that, and you wouldn't have to worry about inclement weather, whether it be heavy rains or showers and stuff, because it does rain a lot in the UK. So that would be the only downside to it, if it were to rain out. Here's another thing that I've been thinking about that no one seems to be talking about. Where are all these fighters gonna train? Will the boxing gyms be open? How are these guys gonna get their training in? That's another question that I have that doesn't seem to have been answered thus far. It's great if you can have a venue to stage the fights, or have an area to stage the fights, and you put the safety plan in place. And it seems like all these promoters are all set up for the testing and whatnot. But what about the training for the fighters? If no gyms are going to be open, then how many people are going to be allowed in the gyms? They're going to have to put a safety plan in place for the training as well. And it just seems like there's a lot of moving parts here that haven't been addressed. I'm sure they will be addressed down the road. But that's a question that I would have for Eddie Hearn. And I probably should have asked Bob Arum a question yesterday, but I wasn't thinking of that. And I just thought of it actually today. Like, how are these guys going to train? So that's a big, big thing. So, but it looks like some of these fights are going to be good. I mean, like Bob Arum had said yesterday that he plans to go ahead with Teofimo Lopez and Vasily Lomachenko, but we have to wait for the travel ban to be lifted. I'm wondering when the travel ban in the United States and Europe is going to be lifted. I know that President Trump has lifted the national guidelines. He's lifted his recommendations, and he's he plans on allowing states, or he was recommending that states loosen some of their restrictions based upon where they are, where they're located, based upon the amount of infections and stuff that they have. So could at some point later this year the travel ban be lifted, and now you can get some of these fighters to come over to the United States, and vice versa, go over to the UK or whatever, to make these fights. So Tyson Fury, Bob Arum was saying, Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 3. He's hoping that he could get that done by the end of the year, in the fourth quarter. And possibly he's anticipating the travel ban will be lifted by then. It could be, because a lot of this stuff that's going on right now, we got to play by ear. But this is kind of revolutionary. And when you look at the schematics here of how Eddie Hearn has this laid out, it looks pretty cool. And I will agree with him. I think he'll have the best optics. He'll have the best presentation to show on DAZN or if some of these are going to be on Sky Sports as well. So as far as a visual, you'll have a nice, bright, colorful. It'll be in a beautiful garden, because that property looks beautiful. It looks beautiful, and I mean, I think he'll have an advantage on the visual presentation when you look at how these other guys are going to be doing it. I don't know how PBC is going to be doing it. I'm sure they'll have some similar some similar setup type procedures in terms of the testing, like Top Rank has and Matchroom has. But as far as the optics goes, I think Eddie Hearn is going to have the advantage over everybody from what I'm seeing here in some of these images. But thank you, Alexander Wilson. He says Jamal Herring is training with full camp right now. Where is he training, though? That's what I'm saying. So are they allowing the boxing gyms to be open? I guess it depends on the state. I don't know what's going on in the UK when they, if they're allowing boxing gyms to be open. I guess it depends on where you live and how strict the restrictions are going to be in that state. I think Nevada is starting to loosen some restrictions. I know Florida has loosened some restrictions, so possibly they are allowing the gyms to be open for training. I don't know. UK, Tupac says UK have all the gyms closed over there. Okay, but is that just the commercial gyms, or is that the boxing gyms too? See, that's something we don't know about. So these are all questions that need to be asked. So I think that Povetkin versus Dillian White fight is a pretty interesting fight. And like I said, Bob Arum plans on bringing Terrence Crawford back too, but he was saying it's going to be, he's shooting for a unification bout with either Manny Pacquiao or Errol Spence. So we are going to have some decent fights. These aren't going to all be like lower level fights, because the big concern was because of the live gate not being a factor anymore, because the live gate's going away and lost revenue in regards to that a lot of these fighters would have to take lesser opponents, because they wouldn't be able to get the money that those big fights would be worth, because there wouldn't be that revenue generated from the live gate. But some of these fights that I've been hearing about are still pretty decent fights. And like I said, who knows when this travel ban is going to be lifted? It could be in by the end of the year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we could see Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 3 if Fury's able to be able to be flown over here. So all this news that we've been hearing or these last couple days and over the last two or 3 weeks has been pretty promising. It seems like all these promoters have a plan in place. Seems like they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and we're going to have boxing back possibly as early as June. So we have fights lined up for June, July, and August right now. Bob Arum has a couple weeks of fights scheduled already. Eddie Hearn does, and I think PBC's got a schedule that they're hashing out right now. So it looks like boxing's going to be coming back at full strength, pretty much. I mean, the cards will be smaller. That's one downside. If you're watching fights on television, I don't know how much of a difference it makes for you to be watching it with a crowd or not, as long as you're able to see the events. Some people have said that it's actually kind of cool without the crowd, because you can actually hear the punches. You can actually hear the punches and hear the impact and how hard they are and the smack and stuff like that. So that'll kind of bring kind of a cool factor to the fights. That'll be something that's different and something that we're not used to seeing. So that'll be interesting to see. I kind of look forward to that. But yeah, we'll see how this all plays out. Um, I'm sure I'll be able to watch these matchroom fights on DAZN. I'm sure that I'll be able to do that, and I won't be missing out on boxing. I'll be able to have a full plate of boxing moving forward from now to the end of the year, and hopefully we'll get some of these big fights sooner rather than later. So we'll see how everything goes, man. We'll see how everything goes, and hopefully we don't have any hiccups along the way, and hopefully none of these fighters test positive, because I guess Bob Arum was saying that he has 5 fights scheduled just in case one of the fights falls through, and then he'll just go with the 4. And another question I'm thinking of that I should have asked him: well, what if two fighters test positive in 2 different events? So you got a guy in the main event who tests positive, and then you got a guy in the co-main event that tests positive. That's 2 fights down. So then what happens? There's a lot of, I guess he alluded to this too. Is like we're gonna have to play this by ear and just kind of roll with the punches here, because there could be instances where multiple fighters test positive, and a great portion of the card itself will have to be scrapped. That's why I asked him, are there backup fighters just in case fights fall through? We've seen that in the past. Alexander Wilson, thank you so much. He says UK relaxed the lockdown restrictions this week. People can go to gyms alongside they adhere to the social distance guidelines. Oh wow, so you guys have the gyms open. Yeah, here in Massachusetts, on Monday, which is May 18th, the governor is supposed to announce what we're going to be doing moving forward, because that's when the stay-at-home order expires. But he had said that he's going to loosen restrictions, but he's not going to just open everything up. He's going to do it gradually. He's going to do it responsibly. So we'll see what happens. Tiny Tim says, no, that's not true. Fake news. The gyms aren't open. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't live in the UK, so I don't know. I know here in the United States, certain states, I believe Texas and Florida, I think they've opened the gyms. I know Texas has opened the gyms, and I know some of the states in the center of the country have opened the gyms. I'm not so sure what has happened. I don't think they opened them in California. I know they're not open here yet. So it all depends on where you live here in the United States. I don't know how they're doing it in UK. Obviously, UK is a much smaller country than the United States. So I'm sure they'll be doing it differently over there. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, there's a lot of unknowns here, because obviously we're in uncharted territory. Bob Arum has admitted this. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. So there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to learn on the fly, he said. So I'm sure Eddie Hearn will experience those same hurdles and challenges. So at least there's a plan in place. At least it looks like boxing will be back in June. And it seems like there's a good amount of fights scheduled to keep the calendar filled up, and which will enable us to be able to watch fights every week like we were doing before. This was a great year for boxing. Like Eddie Hearn said, I think boxing had a lot of momentum this year. There was a lot of good fights this year, and we were able to see so much boxing. I can't remember ever being able to watch so many fights because of ESPN Plus, because of DAZN, and because of all these platforms that we have available to us that weren't available to us before. Boxing was on a high. It was, and even that Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder rematch, that got a lot of people's attention. A lot of casual fans were watching that fight. Tyson Fury I think did a lot of American television. He was doing a lot of talk shows and stuff. So he was starting to become, and possibly even is a big name over here right now with a lot of the casual fans. So boxing had a lot of momentum until this happened. And I think once it gets going again, I think it could regain that momentum as long as these big fights happen. I think that Fox, PBC with Fox has been doing a great job promoting fights. Bob Arum over with ESPN, Eddie Hearn with the Zone. I think they had a great second half of the year over at the Zone. There was a lot of good fights that took place on the Zone. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited, but I'm still cautiously optimistic because I am a little bit concerned about what's going to happen if a couple of these fighters test positive on one card. What's going to be the plan B? Because Bob said to me, "Hey, we're not going to have backup fighters in place, but you may have to. You may have to. If you have, a four fight card scheduled, and like I said, two or three fighters in each of the fights test positive, you're going to be up. You're going to be up Schitt's Creek. There's no question about it. You're going to be up Schitt's Creek if two of your fights, that's half your card, or that's almost half your card. If two of your fights fall through, you're going to be screwed. So that's the only caveat that I see here from my vantage point. So what do you guys think? You guys excited about this? You guys looking forward to this? I'm sure everyone is because damn, we haven't been able to watch anything, man, except for the UFC. The UFC event did go off pretty good. It did go off pretty well. There was one little hiccup, and they seemed to be able to take care of it. But the problem is the closer to the event that you get, obviously that's less time you have to be able to address any issues. So if you're testing fighters a couple times a week, and then like before the fight, a fighter tests positive, there's got to be a plan B in place. There's got to be. I don't know. I suggest and I recommend that they do have some backups, just in case some of the fights fall through. Just like we've seen it in the past where I guess they with I forget what fight it was. Oh, when Julio Cesar Chavez fights Eddie Hearn, when he said when Chavez Jr. was scheduled to fight Danny Jacobs, because of Chavez Jr.'s history of always having something go wrong and him not always being able to go through with the fight, he had some backup opponents lined up. I think Gabe Rosado was the backup for Chavez Jr. So you may have to do something similar to that, with this situation here. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Alexander Wilson, thank you for the super chats. I think that's about all I got, man. Maybe I'll jump on later if I can get some more news. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm definitely excited about boxing moving forward. And we'll see what happens, man. All right, take care, guys. Have a great day. And everyone stay safe. Talk to you soon. Have a good day. Peace out.